People would like to have the Chinese Communist Party determine their energy. Shut off our energy when it gets nice and cold. Shut off our energy when it gets too hot, when it can't be air conditioned. I don't think anybody would want the Chinese Communist Party to control that. But that's what this green energy is all about. It's about the Chinese Communist Party doing that very thing. You know, when you think about a solar panel, you think about it's a big piece of glass and the sun shines on it and somehow it turns into electricity and then it goes off and it goes into my house and I turn on the switch and it takes care of all my electrical needs. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But you don't hear about the complicated part behind the dirty business of clean energy. Clean. The life of a solar panel starts mostly in China. They have about 80% of the solar market, and it starts in a quartz mine. And they mine quartz using Turkic Uyghur slaves that mine it. Once they get the quartz, they have to change it in the form of turning it into a solar panel. What goes into a solar panel? A lot of things go into a solar panel. Copper goes into a solar panel, but you first have to smelt all of it and get it into the form that we're familiar with when you pull it out of the cardboard box. So that requires an enormous amount of energy in order to transform that quartz into polysilicon, which in and of itself has cadmium in it, which is carcinogenic, toxic. And in order to do that, it requires an enormous amount of energy, like I said, and how do you get this enormous amount of reliable energy? You get it from coal-fired coal plants, which the Chinese are building like crazy. That's just the truth. That's just the truth of the matter. So they get these things made, they get these things produced, they mix in different types of conductive materials to help make the solar panel more productive. And they assemble it, once again, with slave labor in a factory, get it into a box, get it shipped over to the United States, gets pulled out of the box, gets installed, you got your solar panel. Well, another part of solar energy, which these folks won't discuss, is batteries. I'm not talking about car batteries. I'm talking about batteries the size of this room. Batteries that are made from materials that are also toxic, and cobalt being one of them. And where is that mined? Pardon me? Afghanistan is one country, but the biggest country is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is neither democratic, republic, but it is Congo. And children are primarily the people that mine it. They literally get in by hand to dig it up, process it. Once again, a very toxic material. Get it put together, gets shipped over, gets made into a battery. These batteries are the size of like a semi-trailer, to get an idea. Inside them are cells that get put in rows after row after row. And what happens if one of the cells gets overcharged or overheats? It catches on fire. And what happens when one catches on fire? They get what's called runaway, where one heats up, it burns the next one next to it, which in turn burns that one, so on and so forth until the whole thing goes up in flames. The problem with this, well, that's the problem in itself, right? But the big problem is you can't put these fires out. They're very difficult to put out. You can't just throw water on them. There was a huge battery fire outside of Chicago just a couple months ago. And the only way they got containment was to put concrete on it. That was the only way to contain the fire. And they emit an incredibly large toxic smoke when they burn. Like anybody that's seen a battery burn, car battery, any type of battery, they're toxic. You don't want it exploding in your face, you don't want it burning, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Well, just imagine something the size of a semi-trailer catching fire and burning. We do not have the capacity today to handle a solar fire. We just don't. We just don't have it. You can go ahead and talk to any fire department you want to. any fire district, they will tell you exactly what I'm saying. They really don't know much about this solar project, is what they'll tell you, which is the honest truth, which is what we want, is honesty. And that's just the reality of it. So, in order for the solar farm to be generous term, this big industrial chunk of property to be productive, we're going to have increased fire protection. Because they'll have to be specially trained, they're going to have specialized equipment, and they have to be ready to fight a fire when it does break out. And they break out quite frequently. There's no national database that tracks solar fires. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the government is pushing solar farms and wind farms and things like that. They don't want bad news getting out, because that prevents them from taking advantage of promoting it. So almost anything you Google search will always lead to fairy tale presentations of how solar and wind is just the most wonderful panacea to solve all the world's problems. It'll be just wonderful. But approach it with a critical mind. Critical thinking is required when you're dealing with things like this. You've got to dig deeper. These things have not been out for very long. And there was a time in our country when asbestos was seen as the most incredible product ever made. They put it in everything. They put it in flooring, they put it in drywall, they put it in anything they could think of. And then what ended up happening years later? We all know what happened. It wasn't the greatest thing ever. They even put it in filtered cigarettes. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But the reason I bring that up is because it is analogous. We are embracing something that is not fully proven or tested, and we're doing it on an extremely large scale, a dangerous scale. And right down the road here, an 8 square mile sized piece of property, you're going to see solar arrays for miles and miles. And they're not pretty. In one study, they said they've killed an estimated 140,000 birds. You think, well, why would that happen? Because bird brain, right? They fly over, they think it's water, they swoop down, they go land on it, and they get smacked, or they get burnt. And then the predators move in to eat them. So you got tracking all these animals from all over. So there's a lot of reasons not to like these huge solar farms. And if you're considering putting one on your roof on a very small scale, call your insurance carrier first and find out how it's going to affect your insurance. Because these things do catch on fire. And when they burn like your garage down, they burn your house down, whatever. They're dangerous. And that's why we're trying to do what we can to stop it. And that's why we need everybody to spread the word that we need to stop this solar farm. They keep expanding the size of it. It's up to 2,500 acres now being proposed on the Johnson County side. It's almost limitless on the Douglas County side. We could be looking at a 5,000 acre solar farm right down the road here. And it'll stay there for 30 or 40 years. And nobody in this room is going to directly benefit from the electricity made from it. Nobody. You might, it's a random shot, but it's going to be put right into the grid. And we all know what happened in Texas last winter. A lot of people died when they really needed reliable, dependable energy, and it wasn't there. And that's what's happening in Kansas. The same thing. And if you get to learn this more about these issues, you'll probably come to the same conclusion I have, and you might be willing to testify in the next state legislative session about this. Senator Mike Thompson is going to have hearings, and he wants to hear people. So let me know. I'll get you signed up to testify if you're interested, if you're up to speed on these things. And we can actually have some comprehensive state energy policies. Because right now we don't have any. There's nothing stopping anyone from doing anything they can get a county to agree to. So if they win, you lose. And that's just how it is. Any questions? That's pretty much what I had to present. Yes, ma'am.
Initially, these batteries fail at some point, don't they? And they can't recycle, they can't do anything with toxic waste.
That's correct. And right now, the government, the federal government, and our county government, and our state government, doesn't have any type of regulation as far as how to dispose of solar panels. You can literally throw them on the back of a truck and go dump them in any type of junkyard, dump yard, anywhere. There's no regulation on them. And batteries are very toxic.
That's what I understand with all the electric vehicles, is eventually the battery cell's gonna fail, and then they just dump it in a landfill, and it's a toxic waste issue.
Yeah, and a lot of them actually end up being sent overseas, back to the same poor countries, in many cases, that the raw materials originated from. So if you care about humanity, a lot of people don't care, I'm sorry to say. If they don't have to see the ugliest thing, they don't want to hear about it. But the fact of the matter is, this creates a terrible toxic problem. And somebody's going to end up with that toxic problem. Whether it's our landfills in Johnson County, or they're just dumped somewhere in Africa, or some other poor, godforsaken country, and let those people deal with it. That's just, in my opinion, that's immoral. That's unethical. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be better people than that. That's just not right. And so you're correct. There's an enormous amount of waste that's created from these things.
Concerning the toxicity of batteries, is there any information on how it affects the water supplies?
Yeah, if they do get into the soil, they do affect the groundwater. And Captain Creek drains to the Kansas River, which runs through part of where this solar array is planned. It actually goes through 2 different watersheds. So yes, if these things, and they say, well, if they crack, they stay isolated. No. When something gets broken, something cracks open, it spills onto the ground.
And is that like animal systems that, like we have to do certain medications, we have to dispose of them properly?
Right.
Does it affect the water supply?
There is no regulation other than putting them in a landfill.
I would think of like the ECW agreement in a way that this EPA site.
Right.
They don't make batteries.
Right. And unfortunately, our federal government is pushing this green, solar, wind, all of it, just shoving it down our throats. There's no ugly side to what they present. It's always just sunshine, blue skies, wonderful. We should embrace it. It's a wonderful thing. Well, there is another side. Yes, Charmin.
My husband spent his career working for the natural gas pipeline. It actually goes pretty close to the southern boundary.
To 16 years, 26.
And it's a tunnel.
With the pile driving that they're going to do as far as putting foundations in, this is going to rather.
Has anybody talked about that? Anything thought about it?
No, see what the planning commission, right now it's at the planning commission stage. It's not at the county commission stage. At the planning, they don't even have zoning figured out yet. They're trying to create a specialized zoning for solar farms. They're calling it farms because it can be harvested. So they're making it comparable to like a rutabaga or something. It's not, we're not talking about vegetables here. But that's why it's called that, because they're trying to create a special zoning.
I have a friend that works for Evergy, and the coal plants that they're shutting down, China is buying.
Doesn't surprise me. But the thing is, Kansas has already, the legislature's already decided to shut down our coal plants. We can change that in the next legislative session. We can get it to where we can fire these coal plants back up. Now, is it going to be easy? No, because most people let's be honest, most people that walked in here today, most of their knowledge about solar was it's great and coal is dirty, right? Isn't that kind of most people's fallback position in the back of their mind when they think about these things? Because that's all they hear about. And really, the debate should be about reliability. That should be the #1 consideration, is reliability. Most of these coal plants, with the screenings and all that, the filtration and all that, they are so much cleaner than they used to be. It's like the tail end of when we get the maximum benefit is when they shut them down, which is kind of crazy. Usually when technology improves, it should remain, right? Why shut it down when it finally got good? But that's what they're basically proposing. And they don't want to even entertain nuclear, which is a whole other conversation. But solar and wind, you cannot build enough to be reliable. The Midwest in order to survive on solar energy, would need to have the equivalent size of 2 Californias right down the center of our country of solar panels in order to take care of the Midwest needs of electricity if we went all solar. It's just not even viable. It's not. Let's just have an honest conversation. It's not viable. It can't be. It's supplemental on a good day. And when it comes time to get more replacement panels, we're getting them from our enemies. We're relying on the Chinese Communist Party to determine how many they want to ship to us. And the same with the batteries. That's stupid. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out that that's a dumb idea. But that's what we're doing right now. That's what our government is doing. It's pitiful. So we got to wake up, start doing something about it. Yes, ma'am.
On the back end and on more on an economic impact, do they have, if on the off chance they do approve all of this, are there any plans for what has to happen? Do they have to do solar companies have to put money up front in order for it to be saved back? So that way when all of this, which it's not possible for it not to happen, when all of this is abandoned in 10, 30, 40, 50 years, what's going to happen to it? Are they going to be able to, are they going to have to put money up front for cleanup? Or are they going to be able to abandon it, shrug their shoulders and walk away?
The decommissioning is a huge matter. And it needs given serious consideration. Because like you said, solar, we all remember Solyndra, how the government gave them a bunch of money and they went belly up out in California. There might be a point where, well, there will be a point where this has to be decommissioned someday. None of us in this room will probably still be alive, or some of us will be very old. I won't be around. But, 40, 50 years from now when they decide to decommission these things, there's got to be money there in case they go belly up, or any point between now and then. Well, that's what the energy companies are negotiating with the county right now on what that would look like. Would it be a bond? Would it be some kind of an escrow? What kind of, and then how much dollar amount? You can imagine that the solar company wants to do the minimalist amount, and the county is kind of being guided by them on how much should be done. So there should be a huge amount of money set aside for decommissioning. Absolutely has to be in there. And that has to be part of the zoning requirements. Otherwise it won't happen. It'll just be a promise that'll never be fulfilled. Yeah, Dan.
So what are the avenues to fight this? Where you said it's in the planning stage now.
Yes.
So what are the avenues to fight this right now? And then I guess future looking, what are the things that we can do to keep these things from, elections obviously, but anything else we can keep these issues from popping up?
Well, the planning commissioners are all appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And some of them have been in there for 20 or 30 years, long time. They've been serving. They've outlasted even commissioners by just being reappointed, which in and of itself doesn't make them bad people, but it would be nice if there was more variety on a regular basis in there. But what we have to do, it's going to be a long slog, because even if we win the planning commission stage, which is where it's at now, it's going to go to the Board of County Commissioners, and they can override the planning commission. So we could walk away and have a big victory party after the planning commission torpedoes it, and then Ed Eilert and company could step forward and go, we're doing this, and that's just how it is. And so that we would have to fight them as well. So it's like an ongoing battle. It's a series of battles. And right now we're at the planning stage where the planners are trying to determine how to zone it, and they're trying to determine what all the restrictions and the parameters are. They're not thinking about this place specifically. They're thinking about what regulations would apply to anybody that wants to come in and put solar in the county. So it's important to keep that in mind. And our fight has to think in terms of both killing this and regulating it in such a way that makes sense for anyone else that might come behind these people. They're asking for 0 lot lines. They're asking to use up every square inch of their property for these solar arrays and batteries. They're not coming in there with a reasonable 150-foot setback or something like that. They want to put these things right up to the road, right up to the property that so if your house happens to sit by one, you have nothing you can say about it if these people get approved. There's be a big solar array right next to your property.
I've heard that there's like temperature changes and things like that that can happen. What are the effects of like farmland around the area and things like that?
I mean, as far as the ecology and affecting,
Affecting the livestock, affecting
yeah,
farm ground.
well, it's clearly it would affect the paths that animals travel. It's going to change that whole natural dynamic of the creek they're used to going along, or the path they're used to using, or the shelter that they've become accustomed to, those types of things. They're going to come in and they're going to just, you know, level things out and put solar panels on them. So whatever was there before is not going to be able to have the ability to use that land the way they were using and are accustomed to naturally. So that will have an effect on other properties surrounding it and beyond. Not only the runoff situation from long-term pieces and parts and whatever that get into the soil and find their way into the creeks, streams, and then into the rivers and lakes and things like that. It's going to affect the wildlife. It's going to alter their patterns. It's going to affect migratory birds. It's going to affect a lot of things.
Weather patterns and things like that.
Well, the weather, I don't know about weather patterns. It'll raise the nighttime temperatures because these panels sit out all day long absorbing the heat from the sun. And then they don't cool down immediately. They cool down over the course of the night. And the interesting thing is they take the energy, they put it through an inverter, and then it gets stored in these massive batteries. And then when they're ready to release it into the grid, then it goes back through the inverter and then into the substation and then into the grid from there. So it's a commodity. It's like they're going to store it and release it when they can get the most money for it. And they sell most of the energy on very long-term, large-scale contracts. So they might sign a contract for 25 years with a certain energy company, maybe in Missouri or Nebraska or someplace, that's going to take that energy and then they're going to be releasing it under the contract agreement that they have and put it into the grid. But to answer your question, I got kind of sidetracked, but yeah, it's going to affect the entire area, the whole region, as far as temperatures at night, as far as animals, insects, you name it. It's going to affect it. There's no question.
Has there been any studies as far as like, I mean, you put all these solar panels up, you're covering on the ground. The ground is a natural form of energy, and the sun's giving that energy.
Yep.
Has there been any long-term studies of people replacing these fields with solar panels and how that's actually affecting the ground? I mean, just
Well, they'll be actually elevated, and then they'll tilt and adjust depending on the types they put in.
I'm just saying they're displacing all this energy that was previously going into the ground.
Right.
And spreading it out all over the place, and it's actually held up on the surface of the earth.
Yeah, it'll affect the ground, the soils, exactly. It'll affect the microbes. It'll affect all the natural things that go on in soil when it's healthy. It'll be basically fallow soil with what they can get to grow on top. And what they've been planting are like wild flowers and vegetation that typically isn't found naturally. It might be called, you know, it's green, and they'll bring in some solar arrays, they'll bring in goats to you know, clear the vegetation and things like that. But mostly it's herbicides that they spray to take control of whatever crops up underneath these solar panels. So it's either something they spray that wasn't there before, it's just going to grow to deal with it with pesticides, or you're going to whatever pops up there.
It's just oxygen.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the next step? When's the next meeting with the planning?
The next meeting with the Planning Commission is on the 28th.
So next week.
Next week. And if you have an inclination to show up and voice your opinions, or you can also email the planning department and give your testimony. Now, it won't necessarily make the next meeting because they have like a 1 week, you have to have everything in a week before the meeting, but you can give your testimony clear up until before the meeting starts, and it'll at least be in there for the planning commissioners to review. So it's not a waste of time to contact them at any time to try to get their attention. And like Charlotte said, you know, these planning commissioners, they're appointed And they live all over the county. And they represent us. I mean, they're not paid, they're not elected. They're people that are put in there to represent us. They should work for us. The company that's proposing this is a huge multi-billion-dollar company named Nextera, and they're headquartered in Florida. They don't care about Kansas. We're flyover country. They see us as just purely a means of making money. That's it. Nothing personal, it's just money. So we should have a better response from our planning commissioners and our county commissioners.
What can be done about this from the legislative standpoint? Like, can they, go ahead.
No, there has to be comprehensive energy policy. We don't really have anything in Kansas right now. It's really the Wild West when it comes to, if you're a big enough company to come in here, you can pretty much push yourself around, and whatever you can get away with at the county level is what you get. That's how it is now. So we need to have what Mike Thompson, Senator Thompson is trying for, is some kind of comprehensive parameters of these solar farms. Like, here's a good example. Our county puts in a limitation on the size. Well, they put it right on the border. They didn't limit its size. Those put half of it on our side, half of it on their side. And so they collectively have this massive solar farm. They're not stupid, they're smart people. They hire the best lawyers that you can hire. They hire, right now, just for this project, there's like a handful of us that are non-paid, just community activists, if you will, that are trying to fight this. And we're going up against a couple of the best attorneys in Kansas City. We're going up against a paid lobbyist. We're going against a political consultant, you know. So, but I don't feel defeated. We have the ability to speak up. You know, these people do answer and respond to us. We're citizens of this county, so they have to listen to us. But the state does need to have some comprehensive parameters. Otherwise, you know, it's up to the counties, and that's not good policy. It's just not. I think I answered all the questions, maybe.
Well, I have all of the planning commissioners' contact information in both counties and the county commissioners. Feel free to take it, send them an email, give them a call, let them know your opinion about it. And if you've got time to go to the meeting, I would show up.
Yeah, show up. Don't be afraid. If you don't speak, if you don't get on the speakers list, just show up. Clap when someone says something good. You know, they limit how many people can get in the room because of COVID. They allowed 11 seats last time. I had to get there an hour early to get one of the 11.
What time's the meeting?
5:45. So if you want to actually get into the chamber, you probably have to show up a little after 5, unfortunately, and wait.
What time do we have to be there to sign up to speak?
You can sign up till about 20 minutes before the meeting starts, so generally around 5:30 or so. But, you know, I would try to get there a little bit earlier than that if you can. You know, yeah, I mean, it takes a commitment. They're not going to make it easy for you. You know, Travis understands. He's been to all of them too. You know, they don't make it easy. This poor guy lives right by where they're going to put these things.
Yeah, everybody that can show up. I mean, we got to stop this. Like, we're out there in the middle of this, and it's going to be a mess. I mean, our property values are going to crash, and none of us are going to stay out there. I mean, dealing with this stuff. I mean, we need your help, basically. Anything you can do is much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.